We want fish. We want fish. We want fish. Hello, here's Movie Fanatic Nate stopping on by. Having already reviewed recently the original Piranha movie from 1978, I thought it was only appropriate to rewatch and review its sequel, Piranha 2, The Spawning, directed by James Cameron. This movie came out in, I'm not exactly sure, it looks like 1981. And it's strange, you know, the first one was a Roger Corman production. This one seems to have nothing to do with Roger Corman and has now become like an Italian production, which is really cool because I'm a big fan of Italian movies and horror movies and exploitation movies. So it's really weird how this is like an Italian production. And it's got like, I don't know, Lance Henriksen, and it seems like for the most part it's, it was shot with, English-speaking actors and stuff, and versus, Italian and dubbed and all that kind of stuff. So it's a strange production. A lot of times when it's an Italian production, even if it's got American actors, like, I don't know, it just seems like it's been a movie that was shot Italian and then dubbed English, whatever. As I said, James Cameron, this is James Cameron's first directorial effort, and I'm not exactly sure on all the specifics behind it or whatever. I know that he doesn't regard or hold this movie in very high regard, and understandably so or whatever. But I don't know how he came to be in the position to direct this, but nevertheless he did. And yes, I do know that this is kind of cool for you fans of this movie, that this movie is on Blu-ray by Shout Factory or Scream Factory, I want to say. It might have came out last year, and I was tempted to get it, but being, not a huge fan of this movie, and just like with the first one, I don't watch this movie very often, so I kind of just, if I came across this for $10 or $15, used or something, or new, I might jump on it, but for like 20 plus dollars, I can't do it. I mean, even though it does say it's like I think it's like a 2K scan off the original negative or whatever, but still, it doesn't really matter how clear it is. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter if it's clear or not. I don't know when I saw this originally. I imagine I would have ended up with a VHS of it from a video store, just like with the first movie. But in 2008, it looks like I ended up coming across this for $1. This is the Columbia TriStar DVD, which looks really, really good. The only problem with this is it's full screen. And I don't know if this movie is a case of actually cropping. It looks like it's potentially, even though the movie is just 185, it does look like this full screen version is indeed cropping the sides versus kind of the open matte of most full screen movies from 185 movies. Being an Italian production, you probably very well might be missing some on the sides, but it's really a shame because the image quality of this DVD is really, really, really good, and it's just a bummer that it couldn't have been just like anamorphic 185 or whatever, but whatever. So I recently rewatched this after having just watched Piranha, and this one, the thing I like about it, this one is it's different than the second movie. Unlike a lot of sequels, it's often just the same basic stuff rehashed or whatever. This is to an extent too, but of course, and it follows the first one or the end of the first one really, really well, where they suggested that some piranha made it to the ocean. Well, unlike the second, the first movie is like a river, like a rural area slash the river environment. And this is an ocean, kind of a tropical ocean movie. So the sequel, changes in that aspect, which is really kind of cool to have a slight change like that. So the beginning of this movie shows a diving couple going down to dive this wreck or whatever. And basically, as the scene progresses, we kind of find out that it looks like they're going to dive into this wreck to get naked and have sex, which is really, the actors at the beginning of this movie seem probably to be like, Italian actors or whatever. And God, the chick in the beginning of this movie is, that dives down with their boyfriend or lover or whoever the hell this guy is, gosh, she ends up being naked and underwater and gets on this guy, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is just absolutely like ridiculous. Like, it's sex, deep sea sex, and the scene doesn't go very far, and before, of course, they're invariably attacked by piranha or whatever. So they dive into this shipwreck and get attacked by a piranha. That's the beginning of the scene. And then the opening credits happen, and the opening credits, they're kind of lengthy, actually a little more lengthy than you'd expect when they start, but they're really cool because it's like shots of like the underneath the wreckage of the ship or whatever, and it's mainly blue, but when the credits roll, you know, when the credits come by, it's like there'd be like a blood red color, which will like change the credit. So this blood will come, make a credit, it'll kind of go away and come back and make another credit. The opening credits are actually really kind of cool for this movie, and actually the early 80s Italian, you know, Italian-esque kind of music in the opening credits is really cool too. And having just rewatched it recently, I'm like, you know, why don't I have the Blu-ray of this? This is kind of cool, and you know, I don't know, you know, when after you know, by the time I finished the movie, I kind of understand why I don't have the Blu-ray of it. But I mean, there are aspects to it that are really cool, and you know, if you like opening credits, the opening credits in this movie are pretty cool, and the music and stuff, so what the hell. So after the opening credits are done, we introduce some of the main characters. I would say probably the main character, who I'm just going to basically call Hot Mom in this movie. Basically we pan up this woman's, like, I don't know if she's sleeping naked in the bed with her leg, and up to see, you know, this woman laying in bed, which a few moments later we were like, oh wow, she's hot, and a few moments later we'll realize that, you know, then I, you know, basically branded her Hot Mom. Once the teen son comes into the room, it's just like Hot Mom wakes up apparently naked. I mean, she's covered with, you know, bed comforter sheet or whatever, but wakes up, you know, and son comes into the room bringing her, you know, breakfast just arrived at the door. Basically these two like live in a hotel room that, you know, live in a hotel room at the hotel she works at or something like that, and just to save some, you know, better way to save some money, the room, you know, they have the room for free because she works there, which doesn't seem realistic, but it's a movie, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, they'd never let that happen probably. I mean, they'd obviously, anyway, it's a movie, it doesn't matter. But you know, Mom, the woman who plays Mom is really pretty hot, and I can't remember if I've seen this woman in anything else before, but you know, I gotta say that she's definitely not hard to look at and kind of enjoyable to watch. And it's funny because as this movie wore on, I was just like, you know what, this woman reminds me of, you know, a lot of, you know, Ripley, Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, and a couple movies after this, he'd end up, you know, doing the famous sequel with Sigourney Weaver as Ripley. And it's funny because, I mean, although I don't imagine Cameron had anything to do with the screenplay of this movie, like, this woman is kind of a Ripley-esque character where this is the main, she's pretty much more or less the main character, and you know, kind of like one of them, you know, take charge and get it done kind of a woman, like, you know, James Cameron would end up, well, not only Aliens, but his next movie, Terminator, would be, he'd end up doing as well. So, I mean, it's funny that even though he probably had nothing to do with the script, his first movie does have what would continue to be something that he would have, you know, as long as he'd continue to make movies, is a strong female character. I don't know if that was just by, you know, just dumb luck or chance or whatever, but it definitely was something that's, you know, definitely in this movie. His son informs Mom that he just got a job for this, you know, work on this, you know, crewing on this one guy's yacht, and when she's not too sure how she feels about it, and I think basically son, you know, teen son talks her into it, and he goes off to do that for the whole part of the movie, which is something we kind of just keep coming back to. It's not really a big deal, but I will say, I mean, the yacht that this kid's crewing on, he's like the only crew member besides this, you know, this rich guy, this rich doof guy, and oh my God, I'm going to show a shot of her, his frickin' daughter in this movie. Oh my God, look at this chick. Look at this chick. Oh my God. Unfortunately, you don't really get to see, I don't know how old, you know, I would imagine she's at least 18 when they're filming this movie, but I don't know. You don't really get to see, unfortunately, you don't really get to see anything clear of this chick, and it's just like, oh, bummer. But, you know, so basically he goes off and, you know, works on this boat with, you know, this guy and his daughter, and it's just this thing that they keep, you know, as the movie progresses, they'll just keep coming back to, and it's not a really big deal, but that daughter is, oh my mama. Another thing I don't think I even mentioned yet is Lance Henriksen's in this movie, which is, Lance Henriksen, of course, also would be in the next couple James Cameron movies as well. And I don't know if it was, his choice to have him in it. It's just weird. I mean, it's funny because in a lot of ways this doesn't feel like a James Cameron movie at all. And then other ways it does, like, the strong female, part or lead part, and Lance Henriksen being in it. And what's funny is in the opening credits when they're giving actors' names and stuff like that, like this has been done before, like in Don't Go in the Woods, where, Lance Henriksen has a box around his name. It's just like, you don't see this that often, and I'm kind of glad because I think it's so stupid, but, I mean, I don't know how, how this ends up where, like, an actor. And it's so funny about Don't Go in the Woods, like, all those people are nobodies, but yet one of them has a box around their name. And I don't know if you can just simply ask for a box, like, I'd like a box, please. And it's just like, if no one else happens to ask for a box, then, like, you're the only name with the box. And it's just like, oh my God. Like, if I was ever in a movie, I'd be like, can I have a hexagon or, like a circle? I want a circle or an oval around my name. It's just like, I don't know what the bureaucratic shit that leads to boxes around people's names and credits of movies. As I said, it's not something that happens that often. I don't think it happens anymore at all, but it seems like in the early 80s it was something that happened, like just random characters or cast members' names had boxes around them. You would imagine, it would cause a little bit of, I don't know. Well, of course, the movie would be done filming before anyone would know the, the box is there. Otherwise, I was going to say it'd cause a little on-set tension, but they don't necessarily know when they're filming that Lance Henriksen is going to have a box around his name. But Lance Henriksen is in this movie playing Chief Brody, if you will. He's like some, Marine cop. He's a cop that's always on a boat harassing people or whatever. So, Lance Henriksen doing his best at a Roy Scheider impersonation as a chief, or I don't know what the hell he is. He's some official law enforcement asshole guy. Well, basically, it is a kind of an intricate plot in terms of these characters. It turns out that Lance Henriksen character is also the husband of Hot Mom, and it's so funny because throughout the course of the movie, Hot Mom will meet some other guy and end up sleeping with them. The whole time I think she's married to Lance Henriksen, even though they're probably separated. And I don't know, it's just like, and at the end of the movie, the guy she slept with ends up dead, and the family ends up back together, and it's just so weird. Like, that usually doesn't happen in a movie where someone's still, like, the lead character woman's married to the guy and she sleeps with some other guy and back together with husband happily at the end of the movie. It's like, well, what about sleeping with the other guy? It's just weird. So it's kind of, it is a lot of Jaws influences as far as just, the kind of Jaws 2-esque, where the teenage son is out on the ocean and you've got Sheriff Brody Dad who's trying to find teenage son and being in charge of this and that. Although the main character, I would argue, is obviously this woman, Hot Mom, Lance Henriksen, even though he's got a box around his name, does kind of play second fiddle. Another fun thing about this movie is you've got this little mini yacht, boat, sailboat, or whatever the hell you want to call it, with these couple of topless, they're introduced topless, I'll just call them topless bitches. They're introduced topless. This one chick is, relatively top heavy, and, well, they're both hot, but, I've got more of an eye for the brunette of the two. And these women seem Italian, they seem like they're not American actors, but Italian women, and oh boy. They're introduced. It's fun, so exploitative cinema how they're like introduced topless. But as they're sailing into the harbor or whatever, this woman is like she's writing down memoirs. The way they explain their characters quickly, which is a relatively decent writing plot point, is having this woman read back to her other topless friend, sailing companion, that they're basically just, what did I brand them? Topless sea bandits. That's what I put on my notes here. They call themselves the sea bandits, the topless sex sea bandits. Basically, I don't know. They took, I don't know if it's daddy's boat or whatever they took, and they've long ran out of money long ago, and now they just have to survive on their wits and their breasts and their usage of both of them. I'm paraphrasing. That's not what she wrote in her memoirs. But that's the general gist of it. It's like they're just surviving port to port by scamming people, probably wiggling her Chat, that's me wiggling my tits. I don't have to. That's just yeah. You know what I'm doing. That's just me pretending to wiggle my tits. Just showing up in port and trying and just stealing groceries, stealing what they need, and then just and moving on, which is kind of a good idea. Not that I, not that I condone stealing or whatever, but just like with the son being, the crew member to this doofus with the boat with the hot daughter and stuff, and these characters are kind of something we just, as the movie progresses, will cut back and forth to a little bit. We see them try to scam this stuttering cook guy in this hotel restaurant kitchen area. She's going to go in there to just steal some basically groceries, and she's caught by the stuttering cook or whatever, and she's like, oh, why don't you stop by, you let me take this food and I'll stop on by later and me and my girlfriend will show you a good time. And he's like, oh, okay. And the guy is genius. He doesn't know he's being scammed, but as a viewer, you're really excited when the guy's like, well, when I come by, I'll bring a box of food with me. And that's kind of like, at this time you don't know if he's a doofus or if he knows what's going on or not. But the woman obviously was trying to steal the food, was kind of like not so keen on that idea, because she was just going to take the food and they were probably just going to leave. Well, this way, they have to wait for this doofus to bring the food, and I might as well just say it later on when he does that. There'll be a scene later on when he shows up, and they kind of trick him, give us the box of food. They're on the boat. Give us the box of food first, and then untie the boat for me, and then jump on. The boat's kind of drifting away from the dock where after he gave him the food, he's still standing on the dock, and he's like, jump, and they're like, jump, and he's like, ooh, and just misses, and he's in the water, and they're laughing. At this point, you really hate these bitches for, doing this to the stuttering cook guy. So as the movie progresses, we find out that Hot Mom is, what does she do at the hotel? That's where we were wondering, is she a masseuse, or what the hell is she? But no, she turns out she's a diving instructor, and she ends up, taking this very much was just like Jaws 2. There's a lot of Jaws 2, parallels to this movie. The more I come to, think about it and talk about it and stuff. She's a diving instructor. Takes these basically, I think this ship that that the couple dived in and got massacred at the beginning of the movie. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not really good at necessarily getting plot points through expository dialogue, but I think the ship sunk relatively, recently, and I think it was basically a government ship, which all the experimentation of Piranha stuff was done on. So from what I can gather from this movie, the Piranha didn't necessarily come from the river like the first movie. Like the Piranha, experimental Piranha in this movie might be originating from the ship, is I think what we're supposed to believe about this movie. But this character takes this group down to the ship, saying, well, you can't go in it though, but because it's just off limits inside or whatever, but we can dive to it and look at the exterior. And one character ends up breaking the rules, I think, and going inside, and he ends up getting massacred and chewed up by Piranha, and she feels guilty about this, and it has this kind of a vendetta is not a right word. She's kind of got this this, whatever you want to call it, this, I won't call it a vendetta, just this, she's got this goal, we'll just call it a goal, to, she's not allowed to see the body because she might be, involved in the lawsuit against, evidence might be against her, they might, how can I explain this? They don't want her to see the body because they might, be needed and used in evidence against her for her, being, being complicit in his death or whatever. So she has to sneak in to the morgue or whatever to see the body, to take pictures, because she, I can't remember if I think she, when the guy was being attacked or whatever, she followed him in at the end and saw him being chewed up by Piranha or whatever. So that's why she wants to see the body or whatever. She ends up sneaking in with this guy, this diver guy that kind of, is all flirty with her, and, basically wants to probably jump her bones, I would imagine, and stuff. And she ends up sneaking into the morgue with this guy to take pictures of it, and, and stuff like that. And after that, they're discovered by the woman who works there, and they're kicked out of there. And after that, because nothing Piranha, I don't know, the first 30 minutes of this movie doesn't really have much Piranha stuff going on. And I think this is like one of the first scenes where we actually see like one of these land-based Piranha actually come out, because this woman who kicked them out of the morgue's got to put the body back. So she goes over to the body, and it's just like, I don't know, something happens, and she looks at it, and the piranha head kind of pops out, and like then it just shoots out at her, and we find out that this piranha's got wings, and it's basically flew all over to her neck and chewing her neck out, chewing her neck all out and stuff, like ripping her neck out and stuff. So I think at this point of the movie, it might be more than 30 minutes into it, it's kind of the first, this is probably the first on-land piranha attack we've seen. So I think not long after that scene where that woman at the morgue gets her neck all chewed up, I think the whatever I used to call them, the topless sex bandit bitches or whatever, they end up, of course, I think they only have like 3 scenes, like their introduction scene, and then one scene where the one woman's going to go to try to steal food, and, oh no, maybe 4 scenes. And then the scene where they put the guy in the drink, and then the 4th scene is when they're attacked out at sea at night by the flying piranha. I gotta say that, although it was an attempt to try to do something different with the second movie, I'm not exactly, I don't know. I mean, let's face it, I mean, the piranha in the first movie it was a perfect combination of like, unbelievability and believability, whereas like the flying piranha, I mean, although supposedly there's actually flying fish or whatever, I don't know. Let's just face it, I mean, the flying piranha in Piranha 2 are just a little, maybe even a little bit more past a little bit too much for this particular viewer to really fathom. I mean, it just becomes so over the top that you don't really even, it's not necessarily all that believable, basically. But the attack on these bandit bitches is like the first full-on kind of assault via flying piranha fish or whatever. And as the movie progresses, we learn that this guy who was the diving student of this hot mom or whatever is actually a guy who was I don't know if he was from that ship or he was in on basically these piranha, the genetically engineering modifying of these piranha to be now flying or whatever. And I think he was in on it. And I think I don't remember. I would imagine they had sex before the hot mom found that out or whatever. But yeah, so I mean, it becomes, I don't know. It becomes a little, I don't know, plot. I don't know if you call it plot heavy, but just with all of this stuff going on with Lance Henriksen being the estranged husband of this woman, and this woman sleeping with this guy. Now this guy is revealed as a government whatever agent guy who was secretly trying to get down to this ship, although I don't know why he needed her help to do it. Why can't he just dive down to the ship himself? I don't really, it seems like there's a lot of plot holes in this movie, and maybe that's why I'm not understanding it fully. Strangely enough, one of my favorite scenes, if not my favorite scene in this movie, is really this low-key scene, which is just like this one guy's son, this fisherman guy. Early on in the movie, there's this fisherman guy, Lance Henriksen busts these guys fishing with dynamite, and this guy's got a teenage son, and I don't know, when I was rewatching this recently, I'm like, that scene, I don't know, it was just, the pacing of it was perfect, where this guy's teenage son is just washing up at night after a day of fishing or whatever, hanging up nets and stuff, and there's this tub of water that he's washing up, in front of, and he drops his watch in it accidentally, and there's this bit where he's just like got to reach down, and of course you assume he's going to get his arm attacked, and he does this really slow and brings the watch up, and all seems fine, and then all of a sudden, from another spot, like it wasn't from in the water, it was just from off the side of the, wherever where he's washing up, it's just like the piranha comes flying out and attacks him. And he ends up landing, falling into this tub of water or whatever. Like that, I don't know, there's something about that scene that was just like, it was shot and cut like to perfection. Like the pacing of it was absolutely perfect to lull the audience into, it was like a great, sense of lulling the audience into whatever. Like, something's going to happen, but it was misdirection. Like, you thought it was going to be, he was going to get attacked from under the water, but no, now these piranha attack, not only in water, but in, in land or air or whatever. So it was just kind of a cool scene, just taking its time and milking it a little bit, and a little bit of, cool exercise in misdirection or whatever. You know, one thing I do like about this movie is its tropical aspects it's got to it, let's face it, and the whole movie taking place at this kind of, you know, tropical resort hotel thing with the guy who runs it is this, I don't know, he just comes across like gay or whatever, just this guy who just thinks he's all the shit or whatever, and every year there's this some kind of thing that they do for the spawning or whatever. That's how the title The Spawning is worked into the movie or whatever, where these fish flap up on the beach to, you know, in the first full moon after the spring equinox, for mating ritual or whatever. And so at this particular hotel, you know, it becomes an annual thing at midnight after all these fish flop up onto the beach, where people basically, from what I can understand, you know, then just go and just basically grab the fish off the beach and eat them or whatever. I mean, not raw necessarily, but I mean, you know, they'll go and it'll be this big, huge event thing annually where at the hotel it's this big spiel and big deal where, you know, all these tourists and stuff partake in this thing of just grabbing the fish off. I don't know if this is, you know, I would imagine this is something that happens. I don't know. I mean, as far as, you know, a breed of fish, it just seems kind of weird, but I mean, that's nature for you. I mean, I don't know. Feel free to let me know in the comments if this is a real thing, or if, you know, if the species of fish actually do this, kind of flop out onto the beach to mate and go back in. It just seems a little weird, like they wouldn't, it seems like they just die if they were out of the water, but I don't know if they made all of this up for the movie or not, or what, but it's kind of a cool plot point. Of course, when all these people, they saved this for the end of the movie. Obviously all these people gather together at night on this beach or whatever for, you know, unbeknownst to them, this flying piranha massacre, which is kind of the original, you know, poster art would indicate. And it's really cool about the Scream Factory Blu-ray, because they use that original poster art, which is, it's just so tempting to buy almost for that fact alone or whatever. But I mean, let's face it, I mean, the movie is kind of a bore to get through, but just like with the first movie of just all these, you know, piranha attacks, it just gets to be a little overwhelming for me, and I don't really enjoy it as much as just like singular attacks by one, you know, shark at one time in a movie. That's more, I don't know, I can deal with that better instead of just maybe, you know, stuff coming from all directions. Maybe it just makes me a little too anxious as a viewer, I don't know. So, you know, of course, that's the big, you know, ballyhoo, or the big to-do scene about this movie is just the big kind of flying piranha massacre on the beach scene, and that's kind of cool that it takes place at night and stuff like that. It's relatively moody and atmospheric and stuff. And another thing I forgot to mention about this movie is you've got some kind of annoying female characters that show up every now and then, like at the beginning and at the end of the movie, that are trying to just, I don't know, just try to attract men, and particularly annoying female characters, and that becomes annoying. I mean, it's just a little at the beginning and the end, but you know, the little, you know, it's not a lot of it, but the bit that the stuff of it that's there is just really annoying. That, like, is that woman a redhead? Like, I just find her to, at the beginning of the movie when she's trying to woo this doctor who she finds out is a dentist, she's just annoying. And then you got this older woman who's just trying to seduce this guy, and it's just kind of annoying. But anyway, I'm getting off on that side note on that. But to wrap up the review, I will say, after the massacre on the beach or whatever, at the same time, this woman comes up to, I don't know who comes up with the idea to actually, you know, take dynamite, you know, connected to timers down to the boat, where, you know, as a viewer we can only assume these flying piranha fish, genetically modified piranha fish, are nesting and coming from or whatever. Someone comes up with the idea, I don't know who it is, to go dynamite the ship and just blow them all up. Not that necessarily they'd all die in that explosion, but I don't understand, you know, how this is going to solve the problem, because like once they're out and stuff, can't they reproduce, you know, from where they are? I mean, just because it's like the starting point for them doesn't mean that they're not going to survive after you blow up the starting point. It's just kind of dumb, but it's a dumb horror movie, so whatever. So of course they end up doing that, and in doing so, I will say that the end of the movie is this underwater, you know, you know, them diving into the wreck or whatever to set all these charges and stuff, and it is really kind of a cool end scene, really claustrophobic, and you know, where they're fighting against time and against piranhas trying to kill him, and this one guy, you know, there was the former government guy who slept with the hot mom or whatever, gets hooked and ends up dying. I bet Lance Henriksen character doesn't mind that very much. And another thing, of course, that happens throughout the last half of this movie is, of course, you know, Brody, Lance Henriksen, Brody dad, Chief Brody dad, ends up, you know, rescuing the son and his freaking hot girlfriend. Not that they're boyfriend, girlfriend, they're just sleeping together. God, that girl is hot, man. If you've seen this movie, you know what the hell I'm talking about. There's this kind of scene where, like, she's in on an island or something. They take a dinghy to this island to go have sex or mess around or whatever, and she's like sitting in a waterfall or something. You can see a little bit of something, and then you can't see something, and man, and that girl is hot. If you've seen this movie, feel free to leave a comment if you agree about that chick and that girl in this movie like that. You know, oh my God. But anyway, moving on. Obviously, they dynamite the ship as you know, as hoped for at the end of the movie, and I will say the explosion of, like, from underneath, and you know, is kind of looks like a model. And even though James Cameron's, you know, helming the movie, it doesn't look very good at all. This kind of miniature explosion or whatever, and there's this miniature boat on the surface and this kind of explosion from underwater or whatever. You can tell they try to cut around it or whatever, but of course, you know, son and hot girlfriend are rescued at the end. I don't even remember what happens to this hot chick's dad in the movie. I don't remember if dad dies, like the dad of this hot chick. I mean, the hot girl that the teen son ends up with. If he ends up dying, or we just kind of, you know, forget about him or whatever. But Lance Henriksen, hot mom, son, and son's, you know, new squeeze, happily ever after, you know, come together at the end of the movie, and all's well, it ends well. And even though she screwed this guy last night or the day before or whatever, they'll deal with that after the movie ends, I guess. But I'll be able to go, you know, I can only really go as high as 1 star, possibly 1 1/4 stars out of 4 stars for Piranha 2. It's weird because when you think about it, it's not that horrible of a movie. Like, the fact that there isn't really any Piranha stuff until like 30 minutes into the movie, or give or take or whatever, it kind of shows that in the movie's trying to be not just a, you know, exploitation movie, but kind of actually trying to do plot and story and stuff. I don't know what it is about it. Like, I remember the movie being dumber than it was, but at the same time, it's really not that great. I don't know. It's really weird. I don't know if it's cutting around so much that just become that I don't really like. You know, if it's, you know, I don't know what it is about this movie, because when I rewatched it, I was like, when I think about Piranha 2, I always have this notion that it's like an incompetent movie, but it's not an incompetent movie, you know. I mean, like, I think the lead hot mom is actually a really good actress, and I mean, everyone's does a pretty good job acting. I mean, what do I think was so incompetent about this movie? I don't know. There's just something about it. It sucks because I really want to like it more than I do, and I kind of want the Blu-ray. But, you know, it's a 1 star or 1 1/4 star movie. I mean, I can't really justify it. Like I say, if I could find it for $10 or something, it'd be a different story. But I don't know. It's just you'd think I'd like this more than I do, but I guess I really don't. So I guess that'll be my review of Piranha Part 2, as I think it's said in the opening titles, The Spawning. Feel free, as always, let me know what you think of this movie. Do you have the Blu-ray? Do you not have the Blu-ray? Are you glad you have the Blu-ray? I mean, I imagine it's a good Blu-ray or whatever, but yeah, you know, the 2 Piranha movies, or the original 2, I should say, are just not something that I've ever felt I needed to upgrade from DVD, you know, to Blu-ray. They're not movies I generally watch that often, so oh well. Thank you very much for watching my review of Piranha 2, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video.